Welcome to The Dream Show. I'm Jane Teresa Anderson, and this is episode 250. Feels like a kind of milestone, doesn't it? Like, well, I guess it is a quarter of 1,000. I wonder if it'll still be around when we're doing episode 1,000. I'm not even going to try to calculate that at the moment. But I'm very glad and proud that we've reached episode 250. And our guest today, bringing a dream for us to explore together, is Ashe. And Ashe is from country Victoria, as you'll hear. We have just finished recording the dream. Now, for those of you who have never listened to the Dream Show before, I need to explain that when somebody volunteers to be a guest on the show, which is the format for the show, we arrange the date, we arrange the time, we phone up, we Skype up, we make the connection. And it's not until we press the record button that I hear the dream for the first time, or that I know anything at all about the dream for the first time. And we do it this way because we are told over and over again, and we really love it every time you tell us, that you love that format. You like that experience of listening to the podcast, hearing the dream, hearing me hear the dream for the first time, and the steps we take from there to explore it. So we've just finished that process. Fantastic dream, great exploration. You're going to love it. You're going to love Ashe. You're going to love the dream. You're going to love the whole thing. But just before we go there, the websites. My main website, janeteresa.com, that's Teresa without an H, is where you can go to listen to every episode of The Dream Show that's ever been. Although, of course, you can always listen to the most recent episodes on all the usual podcast platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or basically all of them. Also at janeteresa.com, you can read hundreds of blogs on dreams and dreaming that I've written over many years. You can also find out about my books. You can find out how to consult me if you want to go through this process privately and confidentially. Or, of course, you can access my courses. Now, my courses are also available on my e-learning site, the Dream Academy, and you can go directly there. The address for that is dream-academy-online.com, and there are all sorts of courses you can do there, beginning with how to interpret your dreams step by step. Or find me on Facebook or Instagram, but let's get on to the exciting part of the podcast, Ashe and his dream. Welcome to the Dream Show, Ashe.
Thank you.
I know you're in Australia and you're in Victoria, but where exactly are you?
I'm in a town called Wodonga, which is on Dhudhuroa Country in northeast Victoria, sort of on the border of Wodonga on the banks of the Murray River.
Oh, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it's lovely, and it's a beautiful time of year. So
yes,
spring is around the corner, so everything's looking lush and green and ready to bloom. It's beautiful.
Are you also able to go out and enjoy it? Are you in lockdown at the moment?
We're in lockdown, so we can. The great thing about living in regional Australia is that we can still access good bushland and stuff.
Yes.
So it's only if we want to go and exercise, it's only a short stroll to some nice hilly, bush that we can explore. So it's good.
Oh, that's really lovely. Yeah, beautiful. Okay, as you know, I have no idea what your dream is, so it's over to you now.
Okay, so I've been interested in kind of looking at sort of Jungian philosophies for a long time. I'm an artist, and I also like to cook, and I had a business with my partner. We had a cafe that we did all the kind of cooking from scratch, and we were not restaurateurs at all. It was just a love thing that we did of passion. And anyway, so the dream kind of is sort of there somewhere. So there's a chef that we know, and the dream starts that I was visiting him to talk about concrete, and I noticed and he's a chef, and I'd noticed that he'd been working on a new sculpture. It was concrete, glass, and other bits of stuff. It was really large, and it was conglomerate, sort of stained glass window, but not, if that makes sense. It was set on the side of so this is in the house, and it was set on the side of a large open plan cathedral roof house, all of concrete and different textures. really architectural, and the walls were ornate with this kind of texture.
Yes.
The studio was in the side space, and it was long and narrow vault-like space. The work in progress that he was working on, this concrete work, was situated halfway down the room in that studio. I quickly took some good photographs of it. The monolith on my iPhone, like this monolith that I took on my iPhone.
Yes.
While remaining in conversation with him and his wife, I began walking towards the work. I was somewhat peeved, as the work was a direct rip-off of a work that I had made and was going to make, or that I was going to make. I can't be sure. Mm. So, and as I got closer, I noticed that it was on the very edge of a step-down split level. So this monolithic sculpture was at the end step of this kind of step down into the studio. Mm. As I stepped down, I purposely pushed it, and it began to collapse from the top down, just a quarter of it, as I walked out of the studio and back into the open space. I noticed the noise of the crashing down was really loud, and it just kept going. They walked around to see it, and it had fully collapsed and was ruined. I acted remorseful and trying to cry. He'd said that he wasn't sure that we could still be friends. If that, so it was kind of like they walked around, and it kind of happened very quickly, and that, that he wasn't sure whether we could still be friends, that his work had been destroyed. Mm. And that he was sorry, but as I had broken it, I'd need to pay for it as well. Mm. He asked if I had insurance, and I said no, and he said they would have to pay $1,000. The sculpture was smashed to smithereens. It was fine and sparkly, so it kind of exploded. It kind of smashed to smithereens, but into this fine sort of sparkly glitter. Mm. The broom wasn't really working, so I was sort of kind of compelled to sort of clean it up. But the broom I was working with wasn't working. As I continued sweeping, it started to change into a rollable plastic, of which I got down on the floor and rolled up the mess. So it kind of turned into this, like a plastic mat that I could roll up, mm-hmm. but pliable, a pliable sort of plastic material. I began to really try and cry, but I had no tears, and I was making all the right sounds, but there were absolutely no tears. While saying out loud that I don't know what's wrong with me, I'm constantly bumping into things and breaking things and falling over. So it was this kind of hysteria, well, not hysteria, but kind of upset, kind of trying to cry, and then saying these things that, I'm constantly breaking things, I'm constantly bumping into things and falling over. His daughter with a baby on her hip sort of showed up, because they were sort of, my friend and his wife were in the kitchen part, and then his daughter turned up with a baby on her hip, and showing me how to take down this kind of really theatrical curtain that was in the far right-hand corner of the studio, away from the sculpture. And the baby seemed to be in a dangerous position in the mother's arms, and in relation to the curtain rope. So if I told her that I got the drift and that I could do it, I was worried that she was going to hurt the baby, and that's when I woke up.
Wow, yes. I love it. When did you have the dream, Ashe?
Oh, that was probably probably shortly after I reached out to you, really.
So that was about...
Or probably around the same time as reaching out to you.
Yeah. So as we go through the dream, we're really primarily beginning by relating it to the day or two before the dream, and then branching out from there. So if you keep your mind at where you were then. Yeah, fantastic. So you've mentioned that you come from a Jungian kind of background, so you're going to be familiar with taking the more courageous step of considering everybody and everything in the dream as representing something about the dreamer.
Yeah.
Just a few questions to begin with. Towards the end, you said you were sort of trying to cry and there were no tears, and you're making all the right sounds, and you were saying, if I can read my writing correctly, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm constantly bumping into things and falling over. When you were saying that, was that part of the trying? Was that sort of part of these are the right things to say, or were you really feeling that?
No, I was really feeling that. Yeah.
Ah, okay, that's good. So there are some parts in the dream where you're sort of trying to cry and trying to make it sound resourceful, the remorse, and then there are other areas where you're actually getting into the feeling and knowing, this is something wrong here. And the daughter and the baby at the end, are they dream symbols, or do your friends actually have a daughter with a baby?
No, they're dream symbols.
They're dream symbols, even all the more powerful. Okay, and with the concrete conglomerate stained glass kind of structure, is that the kind of material that you would normally sculpture or not?
No, not at all. So this is like I'd kind of been working with, I'd never worked. I'm not a sculptor at all. I work differently to that, but I have been using some concrete in some aspects of my creative practice at the moment.
Okay, so the concrete is the thing there, and I'm struck by lots of things, but I'm struck by the contrast between the concrete structure at the beginning, the monolith, and the fact that after you knocked it down and after you tried to sweep it up and everything, it actually transformed into something quite pliable. So we sort of went through this concrete a thing that when you knocked it over was so it literally shattered. So we know that it was very stiff and unbending. It was monolith, and it transformed ultimately into something very pliable that you could roll up. So there's kind of like that transformation happening in the dream. And so, based on that, I guess, just first of all, from your art work perspective, Ashe, when you say that you've used concrete in your recent art explorations, have you used that concrete in a concrete kind of unbreakable, static, strong, unbending sense?
I guess I'm using it to represent government and bureaucracy, yes.
Ah, excellent. So you're right at the beginning of the dream. That concrete, in many ways, for you represents not only your art, but the way in which you are getting across government and bureaucracy. Yeah, and
definitely.
So if you're the message that you want to give about government and bureaucracy were to roll literally into a model of something more pliable, would that be something that you're trying to bring into place, a movement of government and bureaucracy into something more pliable, more rollable, more flexible?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's really interesting, because I guess I work conceptually. I start from a conceptual place in order to make art, and that concept I'm constantly dealing with, in no matter what form the art takes, is my kind of response to the dominant authorities and cultures that contradict an inclusive and ideal society. So whatever work I'm making is really about, there's room for everybody, and it's about how do we make room? How do we allow other people to have space too? So when we've got a dominant force that says this is how it is, then that's when that's where I start to make work.
Yes, and with a ultimate direction of hoping to make things more flexible, more pliable, more inclusive, as you say.
Yeah.
which is really lovely. Okay, so we know at one level we're working on at that, symbolically when we look through a dream, we're also looking at areas within yourself or, different areas of your mental, emotional, spiritual, physical life, as well as, beautifully as this dream illustrates, sometimes the dream actually working along with us creatively, continuing ideas that we've got in the dream state and working through them. So we've got that too. And we've also got there, haven't we, the essence that you can't, in your dream, the only way to change the monolith into, even though you didn't think that you were changing it into something pliable, but the only way that to do that was actually to completely smash it, to completely bring it back to beginning, and then to try to sort of sweep it up. And then suddenly it sort of under its own alchemy became something pliable and quite amazing. So we've also got running through this idea of pretending to cry, no tears.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and so
because in the last kind of 18 months, I felt like I've done nothing but cry. So that was interesting.
Yeah, or cry, and at the time of the dream, it would have still been easy for you to cry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. But you cried presumably around lockdown, and COVID and other things. Have you, in the dream, what you were trying to cry? You were trying to cry for some damage that you had created yourself from an action that you took. So there's a sense there of I did something that I really wanted to. You did want to do it, didn't you? You did want to.
Yeah, that was, and I remember that feeling in that, I can feel that. What's the word? When you do something that you shouldn't have done, and you just feel really good about it.
Yes.
And I remember having that sensation in my body, or through the dream, I remember having that amazing kind of sense of good.
And so, based on that, why would there be tears of remorse? Because you actually didn't have any remorse. It actually was something that you wouldn't normally do, but felt really good.
I guess there's the interesting thing. The wanting to do it was to show, these people that I actually, that I should feel bad for what I've done to them or done to the object. So you were thinking that you wanted to demonstrate to the other people and make it right for them that you should have felt, even though within yourself you felt really good. So you were concerned with what other people were thinking. Absolutely,
in the dream, yes, rather than going with what. Right, in fact, you were dishonest because you weren't honest about your feelings. You were trying to cover up and be dramatic about it, but it wasn't how you were really feeling.
Yeah.
At the time of the dream, what might you have been thinking that you should feel remorseful about, but actually feeling really good about? Just random question.
Yeah, look, I'm not sure, and it's something I've pondered. I guess I've just been doing a lot of. My mum hasn't been very well for the last year, so I've done a lot of looking up. I just feel like I've been doing a lot of looking after everybody else. You made some major changes in my life, which were I quit, I quit doing jobs that I didn't like, that I don't like, that I'm wasting my time and energy in, and I've, quit those, and I'm concentrating 100% on my own art practice, and that process has taken something that I thought would be easy to make that transition into doing something you love has been quite difficult because it's about setting up new boundaries and that expectation of going to work, or going to a job where people know that you're not available from 9 to 5, let's say, to my current situation where people don't really understand that, I'm creative, I'm an artist, this is my work, this isn't a job, this is my work.
Yes.
And that therefore that they don't really understand that. So there's the kind of thing, can you pop over and do this? Or, I thought I'd drop over for dinner, for lunch or whatever. And you're like, yeah, but I'm working. So that transition was something that was very, I knew that there would be a transition, but I didn't realize the reality of that transition.
So that makes a lot of sense. So you on one level you could compare that with smashing the monolith, even though in the dream you smashed the monolith because it seemed to be a rip-off of one of your present or future works. There's also a sense of, perhaps, I don't know, could the monolith be this one monoculture that we've got where you've got to go to work and you've got to work 9 to 5 and you've got to do this and you've got to do that? And you kind of, smash that to smithereens. I want to be more flexible in my work and also, but as you say, also have these boundaries. So that sense of the remorse that isn't remorse could also be along the lines of, should I be feeling remorse for giving up my 9 to 5 job? Should I be feeling remorse for turning down people's invitation, coming to my house and wanting to have lunch or wanting to help me? Maybe I should be, I should be expressing remorse to them or expressing, I'm really sorry, I can't do this for you, but and yet underneath it all, just feeling really, really pleased. That kind of along those lines.
Yeah. And also, I think there might be a bit of the other two of actually kind of saying, instead of the I should. I should do this, I should do that. It's actually kind of like, well, no, I don't have to. So, the opposite to that I should be going out and doing this.
Yes.
So I can see both sides of that too, that there's the feeling good about doing what I want to do and not being remorseful, and then the feeling bad that I'm not doing what perhaps I think I should be doing. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So perhaps you think you should be doing is back to the 9 to 5 job, or is helping people and entertaining them when they drop in on you?
Yeah, I think that, helping people entertain, the kind of care for my mum, actually taking a little bit of that back, taking some of my time back from that, and that's something that I've done over the last couple of weeks. And that's been quite different. Yeah.
Yeah. So that does make sense of the trying to cry and the no tears. You've got that conflict about how you actually feel about it. Yeah. And yet when you actually then shout out, though, I don't know what's wrong with me, I keep bumping into things keep falling over, that was heartfelt in the dream.
Yeah, that was weird. That was weird. I still vividly remember that. It was very weird. It was yeah, sorry. No,
my take on that, given that you are having difficulty setting boundaries, is that's the bumping into things, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm constantly bumping into things and falling over because it's really difficult to set the boundaries so that I don't bump into them and so that I don't fall over. And I'm getting, the tears aren't about remorse for the decisions that I've made and the shoulds or the shouldn'ts. The tears are about my frustration about the boundaries that I'm finding difficult to set.
Oh my God, absolutely. Bang on. I agree, yeah.
Yeah. So, we're going to do a lot more, but technically then, at least at that point, you go, well, okay, so all we've got to do is find ways to set these boundaries and stick with them. But I just, I know we've got a lot at the beginning of the dream to go, but I just want to jump to the bit where the daughter and the baby come in, because that's straight after that statement there about bumping into things. So it's where your dreaming mind went naturally after these boundaries aren't working for me at the moment. We get the daughter and the baby. What kind of energy did the daughter have in the dream?
It wasn't it was helpful, the intent was helpful. It was like, I just want to show you how to do this curtain, it's in the way. And it was kind of, I felt like there was I think it was neutral, but it didn't feel, it felt neutral, I guess is the best way to say. It was just somebody coming along to say, hi, Ashe, this is the curtain bit here, da-da-da-da. And it was kind of knowing that all the other stuff had happened, but that's not an issue, if that makes sense.
Yes, that wasn't an issue. And she wanted to help you to take down the theatrical curtain, or?
It was like just hoist the curtain up or open. I can't really remember. Like, it was sort of to the right, to push to this. It was a big, full length cathedral ceiling kind of velvet curtain with, the beautiful rope and stuff. It was only half a curtain, if I remember correctly. Like, it was only one. It didn't have a split in it.
Yes.
It was just, and it was pushed against the side anyway. It was open. So I'm not sure what I was doing, whether I was hoisting it up or hoisting it closed.
Right. So if we take that in the context of the boundaries, then there can be that thing that the curtain can be a boundary.
Yeah.
And you weren't sure whether you were actually opening it or closing it.
Yeah, right.
So it's like, how do I feel about this boundary? Is it something I want to be open? Is it closed? I don't know where I actually want the boundary and what kind of boundary it is. But to some extent, it's something quite theatrical, or it's what you would use a theatrical curtain for. What would you use a theatrical curtain for in your life?
Decoration. Mm-hmm. But also, I guess, there's a tie there with the glitter for me. Just that wanting that sparkly, I love glitter, and I guess we have a lot of drag queen friends, so we're always covered in glitter. And so, I guess theatre and entertainment would be the, a show would be what that curtain is, yeah.
Yeah. So it's got all of that, and it had the sense of the show, and we'll connect it back with the sparkly earlier on the dream later, the sense of the show, and yet it was something neutral in the dream. It was something that, until you considered the baby, it was like, this isn't actually important at the moment. And yet it represents many things there, including basically your social life and your cultural life.
Yeah.
When you told the dream and you went through I don't know how I'm going to climb, bumping into things falling over, and then you mentioned theatrical curtain, I wondered whether it was like, this is being dramatic here, bring in the theatrical curtain, because I'm really...
Yes, and I was thinking that too, yeah. The whole pushing it over, the attention, I was wondering about, is there some attention there?
Yes, yeah.
Attention seeking,
Yes, yeah, I think so. Attention seeking, and yet you're at the same time you're thinking in the dream, that's not important at the moment. That's not something that I'm really need to be doing. But what struck you in the dream was that it was dangerous for the baby. What was happening there?
Well, it was kind of like it was like, so she had the baby. She was holding the baby quite weirdly on her hip, in her arm. Now that we're talking about it, I remember it was something about the curtain ropes sort of could be tangled into the baby, and the baby would be ripped from her arms and strangled or something like that.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Because there was like this kind of velocity of this of the pulling down of this rope for the curtain. But it was moving very fast, and it was going in an up way. So I just kind of like, if the baby gets caught in that, it's going to be dragged and killed, basically. Yeah.
So you've got that's interesting. You've got the idea that the pulling of the rope, and you said pulling down. So there's that sense then, the same as a monolith falling down. There's something big that's coming down and that can cause a potential problem, this time with the baby, who could possibly strangle. So I want to get closer to the symbolism of the baby. How old was the baby, roughly?
Oh, infant. Like nursing baby.
Right, okay. So that would be between birth and, just off the top of your head, how many months?
Oh, I don't know I have no experience of babies. I'd say, I don't know, no more than a year.
Okay,
like,
that's great.
Within, like 6-8 months, maybe.
Thank you, that's it. Unconscious mind always knows 6 to 8 months. Baby in the dream, particularly if it's not a baby that you know, may represent something that's been in your life for a certain length of time. This baby may or may not have been 6 to 8 months old. So there's a sense of something that's been in your life for 6 to 8 months old that you feel is in danger of being strangled, of losing its voice.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah. So how long is it since you've been on this mission to, when did you give up your 9 to 5 job?
Only at the start of June.
July, August. So for people listening in, we're actually recording this ahead of it going out. That's a couple of months ago, July, August, 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Could still fit into the nursing baby.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's something that, I was considering leaving, like the process from, wanting to leave to actually leaving, that was started back in January, Christmas time.
Okay, so Christmas to us recording it today, which is towards the end of August, is 8 months. So we've got 6 to 8 months there. So it's the birth of the idea, this baby that you've been bringing along and nursing, literally nursing, because she's an aspect, or everyone in the dream is an aspect of yourself. This thing that you've been nursing, that at the time of the dream, you're thinking, oh, no, if something comes down, it's got the potential to strangle my work, to take out my voice, to take out my expression. And it may or may not have to do with boundaries, which it probably has, the curtain being a boundary, or it may have to do with being theatrical, or it may have to do, as you said, with your, your social life, your drag queen friends, the glitter, the sparkly, all of that.
Or just the non-existent social life.
Yes. Exactly.
And that's something that we haven't been around for, like everybody, it's been so long since contact with friends and doing that fun stuff. So,
the curtains have come down on the area of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it, even, within the world, you can still go to sport, but you can't go to a theatre, you can't go to the theatre.
Yes.
So I guess that's...
Yeah, so that's that area of your life at the time of the dream closed off from you, not only in terms of your social life, but as you say, actually going out as a audience member to the theatre as well. Yeah, the curtain's coming down. But also within the context of this dream, because dreams always have multi-level meanings, we're still back to this idea of the boundaries and whether how much of a boundary those curtains were representing, and how much getting the boundaries right for you and in place for you are going to help you to continue to nurse and nurture this new baby, and under what other circumstances, if the boundaries aren't right, can it lead to potentially strangling your new baby ideas and your expression.
And that makes so much sense, in symbolically.
Yeah. If we go back to the beginning, more towards the start of the dream, to sort of build more into this now, at the very beginning of the dream, it could have been anybody, but it happened to be this particular chef, this particular friend that you went to see. Yeah. And is that friend a sculptor?
No, he's a chef.
He's totally a chef, 100%.
Yeah, he's a restaurateur, yeah.
Yeah. So because, as you said, you have in the past... had a business cafe and you loved it. It was a love and a passion. The beginning of the dream generally sets the situation or issue that the rest of the dream goes on to explore. So being a chef, it could be, when I was a chef, or when I had when you had a business and a cafe. It was about love and passion, not money. And so the dream could be this is about love and passion in my other sense, in what I'm opting for now, and how to explore this. But let's throw a little bit more light on that and think about that person, that chef. What 3 words would you use to describe his personality or approach to life?
Oh, look, focused, jovial, generous. He was a mentor for my partner and I in that, and an advocate for us, and he waved our flag for us.
You pushed his monolith down.
I know.
Okay, so as your mentor, waving your flag for you. Presumably, you mean in your business cafe idea.
Yeah, like, I mean, he knew that we were not, chefs. He was so, he was so encouraging of what we were doing, and, the feedback that he would hear around the traps and pass that on to us, and just, it was just somebody, fanning your flame, it was, yeah. And that's kind of why the dream, I was so kind of, when you see people that in your dreams, I'm always quite shocked by them, because, it's that hard thing between dream life and reality. And,
Yes.
Carrying that over into the day, into your waking life can kind of be weird.
Yes, you don't want to reference what happened in the dream when you meet this person in the outer world. So he represents in many things, many beautiful things there, including mentoring you through your cafe business, and in many ways you now don't run the cafe business at all.
No, we sold it. Yeah, yeah.
So, there may be a sense in which the sculpture that the chef created in the dream, the monolith, may also have been the idea of the business cafe which he was mentoring you through. And therefore, that old business, the cafe that you had, as you say, you folded, may be akin to pushing over the monolith. It's like we had that, and it was a love and a passion, but for whatever reason, I knocked it over. And should I feel remorse for this? I don't know. I'm trying to feel remorse for it, but I'm not really feeling it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. And it was such my partner and my life for 5 years that, and the area that we moved, because we're not really from this area. We moved here 5 years ago and accidentally started up the cafe. It was it was like an organic thing that happened. And that's what we're known for here. And it's like, that's so not who we are. That was something that we did. Yes. But our whole identity is about, the boys from the cafe, It's like, oh my God, we're more than that. Like we're actually artists, and we're actually this, and, we're not baristas and, cooks. I mean, that's part of us, but, and nobody, and even in that, the small, and this is not even the town that we're in now. This was a smaller town, 45 minutes away from here. Further up into the hills, and they get weirder up there. Sorry for anybody in the valleys. I mean, they're beautiful, but you shouldn't go too far up the valleys.
So when I mentioned earlier on, I said, well, maybe the monolith, maybe on many levels, the monolith you were knocking over there was your 9-to-5 job. Maybe it was also the monolith of people's expectations of you. You're the wonderful boys, you're the wonderful baristas, you're the boys from the cafe. I'm much more than that. We are much more than that. I'm knocking down that monolith. I'm knocking down that one-eyed, concrete view that people have had of us. And it was a success. It was good. I felt good. My partner felt good. But I've got to knock that down. And particularly because in the dream you weren't sure whether you were knocking it down because it was whether he had ripped off a sculpture that you had already done, or you particularly said, or maybe ripped off a future sculpture. So it could be that's you also knocking down that monolith of, we could have gone on and maybe we could have had the coffee shop, the cafe, as well as being artists, but I don't want that. I'm knocking that down. And asking yourself in this current lockdown situation, and in the situation where you've got all the boundaries questions going on, and you're trying to establish your serious boundaries around your art, a part of you unconsciously at least going, shouldn't you feel remorse about giving up the coffee shop? And you go, no. I'm trying to, but no.
No way.
No way. And so, and yet, because that sculpture, as you described it, and I wrote down, you said concrete glass, large conglomerate stained glass windows. And when you said large conglomerate, I was thinking big business. You later mentioned that concrete in your work represents government bureaucracy. So there's kind of large conglomerate kind of parallels there. So So we can look at this on all those levels, so many different levels there. But it's also interesting that the monolith was in an open plan cathedral type house. So it was not only open plan, but it had very high ceilings as well. So like, where exactly were the boundaries in that house? Well, there was a little split level floor, wasn't there? And it was, it was just standing on the edge of that split level very precariously. So he said, if that building is Ashe, then it's lovely and open, but your work is very precarious because there's no boundaries in place.
Wow, yeah, that's great.
But how do you do that? You know, that's the trick, isn't it, Ashe? It's like, how do you create boundaries when you are creating work that you actually want to be open and accessible and put out there?
Wow. How amazing. And I just want to say, like, I've been in my studio today, as I said, I've had meetings and whatever. I've made some, I've continued to make some ongoing work that's here in my studio. And I've also been, I just want to send you a photo after this about, this is probably about 2 hours before this, where I've kind of gone, this is the work that I love. Like, this is the kind of work that I'm known, that I'm kind of known for, that I love to make. It relies on being commissioned to make it, and it relies on being funded. So there's those corporations and those government things that I need in order to make that work. I make politically charged work that they don't want to fund. Or, that they fund it and then they take it. Like, I mean, the last 3 shows, I had a show that I was curated in at Parliament House 2 years ago. I went up to wasn't the opening, I went up 2 days later, and my work, and we're standing in, friends had driven up from southwest Victoria, so the opposite end of Victoria from where I am. We drive to Canberra, get to the show, and my work's not in it. And it had been removed by the two presiding officers of Parliament complained about the work, and it was removed within 48 hours of being in the exhibition, and nobody told me.
That's terrible.
So a lot of my work keeps getting censored. So anyway, then I kind of looked at, there's actually 3 streams in my work. There's this one that needs funding and backing, and then from that there are these other possible income streams. And so it's just interesting that you're talking like this, and this is stuff that I'm actually, you know what I'm like, I can just see what you're saying, and it's lived out right now.
It's fantastic, lived out right now. So even though you didn't fully understand these layers of the dream at the time, they have nevertheless percolated through, and you're living them out. Yeah. It gives you, the dream gives you so many beautiful symbols and metaphors for you to be able to answer those questions that you've posed there and decide which income streams to go through. Yeah.
Wow.
There was one other thing that I wanted to say. Well, there was lots of things I wanted to say, but bearing in mind our time.
Yes.
Yeah, the noise was so loud and it kept on going. It was fully collapsed. It was totally ruined. It gives that feeling of not only did this thing that you pushed over and put an end to totally collapse, but it had loud repercussions as well. Where have you felt the repercussions?
The repercussions from what we were talking about, perhaps surrounding the possibility of it surrounding this, the cafe business and the letting go of that and moving on. I mean, even I would probably even go, the repercussions of our identity in that small town have echoed out across the land. So that we weren't very well accepted there anyway. And I remember there was I guess just we no longer live in that town would be one of the repercussions of that.
Yeah.
That I ended up in a job that I really didn't like because I needed to, for an income post that. It was like, we bought a house, blah, 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 blah. The repercussions of that, there probably aren't any aside from ones that I've imposed, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And so because you've imposed them, they have been your choices.
Yeah.
So the not crying, the not remorseful kind of adds up there. So I'm not sure if we can still be friends is basically, there's a part of myself that would still mentor me to have a coffee shop, etc., etc. I'm not really sure that I can still do that. And the $1,000 that would have to be paid. What's $1,000 mean to you? What can you do with $1,000? Is it a big sum, a small sum?
Well, it's not big anymore, is it?
No.
I think it's tokenism in some way. I think it's kind of, it's sort of, to me, it represents a kind of fine or a kind of acknowledgement of being, in the wrong. If for not, a speeding fine, or something like that. That's what it kind of felt like to me. And the ridiculously of insurance anyway. It's this kind of, not a large amount of money, but it's fear, really.
Yes, it is fear, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's fear and paying the price. Yeah. As opposed to just doing something fearlessly.
Yeah.
And there was a sense that when the monolith smashed to smithereens, I wrote down, you said it exploded. It was full of sparkly light and glitter.
Quite amazing.
Yeah. And so you instantly think, wow, should have knocked over that monolith a long time ago. Because look what it gave you. It broke it down into, you've already talked a little bit about glitter and sparkle. Just talk a little bit more about glitter and sparkle.
Oh, just the kind of joy, I think, and, the light and the, just noticing how light glistens, and it's kind of like the glint in people's eyes, that's something, it sparkles. It's about joy and soul and those beautiful feelings of, just like it was sunny here on yesterday, it was beautiful and it was like, everybody was out in their front yards doing stuff, and it was an excuse for people to talk across the fence. So the whole neighbourhood was out, and everyone, it was beautiful. And I think that's for me. I can feel that sensation as I'm talking about that. That's what it.
Yeah, and when you're talking about a dream and you can actually feel the sensation, you're embodying it, you're getting it, and that's the joy of the non-remorseful smashing of the monolith and releasing this joy and soul, you said, and gosh, I wish I could read what I wrote down there. All of that energy that it's released in the dream and released within yourself as well. So, so the corollary would be to say that a lot of that was trapped within you when it was the monolith.
Yep. And even, as you're saying that, and I'm thinking even post-business to, caring for my mum, she had a stroke, a year ago in 2 days. And it was, I've been the sole kind of organizer of making sure that she's, recovering best, and she has. I mean, geez, she's done an amazing job, and thankfully, it was only a small stroke, but enough to impact everybody's life dramatically, and more so mine probably because it's just like I couldn't, it was the first time my mum has been sick really. And so I just couldn't imagine life. I'm just getting used to the fact that my mother's not going to be around forever.
Yes.
And, she's actually quite a good friend of mine as well. Totally love her to bits. So that part of it too was like I'm putting all of this energy into my mum, to the point where, we actually had confrontation where it's just like, Mum, everything I'm doing is not working. I come here and I'm doing the same thing and you're telling me stuff and we're doing it, but nothing's changed. Like, nothing's working. I'm doing things that you don't need. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm saying, cleaning out the fridge or doing something or whatever, and it's like she's not interested in doing that, so I keep going there and doing it, and it's just pouring all of this kind of energy into a black hole.
Yes, absolutely.
And I just had to stop doing it as well.
To put the glitter back in your eyes and the glitter back in her eyes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And, since doing that, probably shortly after this dream as well, since actually kind of going, you know what, I'm taking a step back, and if you don't wash your dishes, it's not my problem. You'll wash the dishes when you need to, or when you're able to. So it's been good.
That's fantastic. So boundaries beginning to put into place within yourself as well, what you're going to do, what you're not going to do, where you're going to put your own joy and glitter.
Yeah. And being able to go out, so it's kind of like, hey, Mum, let's meet up, go down the park for a walk.
Beautiful.
That's the time that we're spending together, rather than this constant deficit of like, oh, you're not looking after, my perceived idea that she's not looking after herself when she's completely happy doing what she's doing. It's me that's not happy with my life's deteriorated.
I absolutely love it. We normally finish with a dream alchemy practice, which, as you probably know, means taking a symbol or a drama in the dream and transforming it towards a positive. As an artist, I'm not going to ask you to step out and do a massive sculptural exhibition to be put on in Canberra. But as an artist, what strikes you as an interesting thing that you can do either with art or visually or in writing to either enhance a feeling that you've got from our dream exploration, or to transform a more limiting symbol in the dream to a more opening, flexible symbol?
Gosh, there's so many, and I've just found the whole thing so amazingly kind of powerful in making those correlations between the dream and what's happened and what's happening, and just how that fits is just incredible. I love this idea of, the tokenistic fine in some ways, or that insurance bit.
Yes.
And, the trying, you're not remorseful. Okay, well then I know you're not remorseful because you can't cry, but give me $1,000. There's something, there's this kind of, I don't know, that's an interesting tension for me. And then again, just the baby, I think, about being caught in those cables and being ripped out of the mother's arms and going up the curtain, I think, is another interesting visual.
So we could work with either of those. The baby one might be slightly easier. So what we want to do is, you want the theatrical curtain to be there because it is a boundary. You want to be able to open and close it at will, maybe not. But you don't want the baby to be caught in the rope. But we do want the baby to be nurtured and loved. What at the moment, how are you feeling about the symbol of the theatrical curtain?
I don't know. I think I'm in love with imagining, its heaviness and the sensation of that velvet, and the presence that something so big has. They're interesting things for me. When you ask me about that, that's what I kind of go to. There's this heaviness to it, but it's a good weight. Heaviness. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
It's not. I don't mean heavy. Yeah, maybe heaviness is the wrong word. It's a really good weight, or stance, or something. If that makes sense.
It holds its shape.
Yeah.
So
but it's supported. I mean, that's the irony. It's this massive thing that is hanging by a couple of strong threads. But
So what if would it work if we pictured the baby dressed in a micro version of the curtains, so that you're combining the feeling of continuing to nurse and nurture and grow the baby and everything that implies, but dressing it in that sense of the presence and the velvet. It is, as you say, it's supported, and it can potentially be used for boundaries. So maybe to play around with those symbols when you contemplate this a little bit more after. So the idea being to transform the sense that, oh dear, I do want the curtains, but I don't want the baby to be strangled, is to kind of integrate the two symbols so that both grow in a wonderful way. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I'm just writing some things down to sort of jog my memory to go back to this. Yeah. Yeah. So we're talking about sort of using the theatre curtain and the baby, integrating those symbols of what I kind of think that theatre curtain is about, and then the idea of the baby being this new idea or this new spurt or life, and then how they come together to create a new symbol that represents that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's all the positives, taking out the fears or the worries about strangling the expression. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's an interesting one. Strangling the expression. I like that. Yeah. Perfect.
We could talk about this for ages, but we do need to be aware of the length of the podcast. Is there anything else that you wanted to ask before we wrap this one?
No, Jane Teresa, that's been so amazing, and I really thank you for your time and investment in listening is amazing, and to be able to sort of talk with a complete stranger, thankfully anywhere in the world now.
Yes.
And just to have some of that stuff unpacked and represented, because sometimes it's really hard to sort of make sense of the symbols that are so inherent for yourself. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. It can be so much harder to work with your stuff and your dreams than other people's, So and people will have loved listening to this by the time it goes out, and they will have loved our conversation, and everyone will be rooting for you. So thank you for being a fabulous guest.
No problem. Thanks for the opportunity.
That was lovely, wasn't it? I just love doing the podcast show, doing the dream show. It's always so much fun to just jump into a dream I've never seen before and get to meet someone and share it with all of you out there. And I was struck with something that Ashe said at the end there. He said, it's really difficult to really basically deal with your own dream, and it's good to have someone walk through it with you and help you. And that's totally true, totally and absolutely true. It's really difficult to see our own stuff because it's our own stuff. It's difficult to see our unconscious because it's our unconscious. And it's often much easier to begin to see an inroad or begin to see paths and meanings in someone else's dream. And those are the values in taking a dream to talk with someone like me, whether it's on the dream show or whether it's in a private consultation. But it's also the reason why I set up the How to Interpret Your Dream step-by-step courses and the other courses at the Dream Academy in the way that I did. I kind of took apart and asked myself, what are the steps that I take? What are the methods that I use? What are the tools and techniques that I use when I approach a dream? And broke it down into those steps so that you can go in, if you do the course, and confidently take one of your own dreams and follow those steps. It's almost like following the steps as if it's not your dream, it's someone else's. How do I do this? How do I work through this? And you can come out at the end with some really good, deep insight into the meaning of your dream. And where you go for that, dream-academy-online.com, or my other website, janeteresa.com. That's Teresa without an H. The next episode of The Dream Show, episode 251, is due out on the 30th of December 2021. If you'd like to be a guest on The Dream Show, go to janeteresa.com, go to the menu, go to The Dream Show, look at the drop-down box, and you'll find your way in from there. Have a wonderful month, and I'll speak to you on the 30th of December 2021. I'm Jane Teresa Anderson.